Hello, everyone, and welcome to Youth Ministry and Mentorship 101. I am glad to have a good friend of mine, Pastor Guadalupe Montour. How are you doing, Pastor?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's great to have you. I do remember working with you at the Southern New England Conference office. And she loves youth ministry. She's been always working with youth ministry, so it's such a great pleasure to have you on. And I also know you are trained in growing young, so that's something else you can bring for us today. So could you give us a little short bio about you and why you started you heard the call to go into ministry?
Sure. I was raised in New York City. I wasn't an Adventist or a Christian in any sense of the word. When I was 16, I came to know Jesus Christ. I went to public school all my life. I found out when I became Adventist, became a part of the denomination, that we had a school system. I ended up at Atlantic Union College, taking up social work. And somewhere in my first year of social work, I just felt this impression from the Lord to not do that and to go into full-time ministry. I didn't really understand what that was because, I never considered that as something that I would do or could possibly even, dream of. So I changed my major, took theology and as my first major, and then a minor in religion, graduated. And then for the first year, I was the chaplain, assistant chaplain at Atlantic Union College. And I said, I don't want to stay here anymore. I've been there for so long. I want to try something else. But instead, I ended up meeting my husband, getting married, and staying at home as a stay-at-home mom, which was actually one of the biggest things that feeds into my ministry now, because it just allows me to see, young adults from a different perspective. I think having children has enabled me to have empathy for young mothers, young adult mothers, and just all the work that it takes to mother and to raise little people for Jesus. And then after that, I ended up interning at the Southern New England Conference in Lancaster, Massachusetts with then Associate Youth Director Ryan Simpson. And that opened the door for me to work there as an administrative assistant, which to me was so essential to everything I have learned and that I use now in my current ministry here at the College View Church. I think the major thing that I learned is that, one, attendance is futile. Mission and Jesus is everything. But strategy and marketing is also extremely important and should be integrated in every aspect of your ministry as you're trying to share Jesus with the churched and the unchurched. So those are some of the things that I garnered when I was there, along with, some other very, desk type jobs, and also just interpersonal skills and learning to recognize, learning to deal or to handle or to connect with, however you want to put it, people of different backgrounds and personalities. And just that was kind of like my platform for a lot of the things that I do now. And I'm currently at the College View Church. I'm one of the associate pastors here, and my specialty is young adult ministry. We are a university campus, as you called it in one of your questions. And the campus across the street from me, you can't see it because of the light, but it's right over there, I swear. Okay. Is Union College, a very thriving a college full of wonderful people and great diversity.
All right. Okay. So tell us about why you love young adult ministry, because your specialty at the church is young adult ministry. So what are you enjoying about that role right now?
I love everything about it. I think it's such a great privilege and opportunity to be able to speak into the lives of people who are at such crossroads of deciding what it is that they're going to do with the rest of their lives. And even that statement is not true, because in a whole lifetime, you will do more than one thing, so just kind of opening their eyes to that reality that maybe they won't be an accountant for the next 60 years, or maybe God's calling you to be a missionary, or maybe God's calling you to be a missionary in the business world. And just being able to sit down. I think my favorite thing to do is the one-on-ones, sit down, let them share with me what their vision for their life is, what are their roadblocks, and then being able, through my own life experience with just life and with God, share with them some of the things that are applicable to their situation. That by far is my most favorite thing. Additionally, I'm supposed to be putting on programs, but programs are not the heart of it. Programs are not the heart of Jesus. They're a great place to come and connect and to network and to maybe meet a spouse. But they are not as important as the one-on-one ministry to young adults, because young adults are looking for mentors. Young adults are looking for someone to pick their brains on, and someone who can share life stories with them, and to be transparent and to say, yeah, I sinned that way too, and this is how I overcame. They're not looking for the niceties or for the generalizations that usually take place at the pulpit. They're looking for that, hey, I need you to walk through this trench with me right now. And I don't know who else can do it because everyone's trying to play church. So those are my favorite things.
Wow. So you said something really interesting right there. You said everyone is interested in playing church and they're looking for that relationship and that mentorship. I find that very interesting because through these interviews I've been having, that's been a theme that's been coming up, that we're in these positions in ministry and they're expecting programs from us, but really our job and our duty to minister is to foster relationships with these young people. So that's something I'm seeing a lot of. So we also mentioned that you are a former conference administrative assistant, and that's usually a path not many pastors have taken in their career. What did you get from that, as a pastor now, especially in young adult ministry, that you can have that other pastors don't really have experience in?
You know what? I think working at that, I think that a lot of, I did theology in my undergrad, and all of the non-females that I graduated with the exception of one or two, are currently in pastoral ministry and did so almost immediately. Would I have chosen administrative assisting for myself? No. But, female pastoring wasn't something that was super, hey, yeah, let me just open the door wide open for you, especially being Hispanic, being a female. Having a name like Guadalupe, everyone expects that you would fit into a more Hispanic setting. But I'm furthest from that. I am from New York. I'm a New Yorkan. And I don't necessarily fit the idea of what a pastor is in the Hispanic world, one, because I'm a female, two, because I'm very conservative in my beliefs, but I'm very liberal in my methodologies. But essentially, being an administrative assistant has become a benefit to me because a lot of pastors, and just my own experience, come into ministry thinking that the end goal is administration in the conference. If I could just be a pastor, then I can climb up this ladder. And, we did a lot of great ministry at the conference, and I worked with a lot of wonderful people. But real ministry, real life-changing ministry that leads people to Jesus takes place at the church level. So there was no amount of programming that we could have done at the conference that was going to allow for a place of discipleship. They were catalysts maybe for discipleship, but they were not in there. We weren't in there for the long haul. So I kind of got a better perspective of, I'm not here to climb ladders. I'm here to lead people to the ladder, hopefully hoping that they would reach Jesus. Secondly, I learned what kind of leader I wanted to be, because I had so much access to leaders on so many levels, church leaders, pastors, local conference administrators from other conferences, North American division leaders. And I was really able to distinguish for myself the kind of leadership that worked and the kind of leadership that didn't work, and to also decide and to pray about what kind of leader I wanted to be if I was ever given the opportunity to be at any of these levels. And I think that was a great place for me to learn that. It was humbling for many people, including myself, because it just repositions, realigns your goal to something that is more heaven focused.
Wow. Okay. So because when I was interning there, it was very interesting experience to just have, pastors from all over districts come in and say what their issues were, and ask for help. And there's certain people that you meet there that can be really inspiring. For instance, somebody who's always there, who just got hired there, is Frankie. And yeah, so he'd always be there, and when you see that a person like that who wasn't doing it for a paycheck, you start to see where real ministry is.
Well, that's the thing about it, is that people think that ministry, that you've reached some kind of that you've reached whatever your goal when you're doing paid ministry, but that's wrong. You do ministry because you believe in the gospel. You do ministry because you think Jesus is worth it, because you think everyone should know Jesus. Paid ministry is nice. It's great to get paid to do something you love, but ministry doesn't start when you get paid. Yeah. Ministry starts when you're convicted of your call to serve the Lord and to be a Christian.
There you go. And using the example of Frankie, shout out to him, by the way, is you do it not expecting a paycheck, and you never know what will happen in the future, because now he's hired there. So what is the hardest part of being a young adult pastor at a university church?
Hard. What is the hardest part? I think the hardest part is the fact that there's just so many things going on at a university.
Wow.
We're a college here, and there's small groups. There's no reinventing the wheel here. There is something going on, and the students here at Union College are extremely active. The administration and the chaplain's office, student life, they care about the students getting to know Jesus. So if that's the hardest part, I guess that's super easy. It makes my job easy. But I guess that's the hardest part. Like, how can I integrate myself into all the amazing things that are already taking place? How can I fulfill the call that God has on my life here? Really just discovering what it is that I'm supposed to do while I'm here, when all these wonderful things are happening spiritually already.
All right. Could you give a little context? Like, do you know how many members are at that church?
We have about 2,500 members at our church.
Okay, so now people realize, that's a lot of things happening, a lot of moving parts.
And that's just church members. I'm not including the students from across the street. So.
Okay, yeah. So it is a big undertaking. So, which leads.
Yeah, I don't do it alone though. We have six pastors on staff.
Okay, six. Yeah. Pastors. Okay. So with those challenges, leads me to my next question. What challenges are there in engaging with the young adults in your area, the students, the members?
I personally don't find it difficult in engaging with the students. It's actually one of the highlight of my day. I love being able to come to work and interact with everyone. I think that just leans more because of my personality. But yeah, I love engaging with them. I don't have difficulty engaging with them. In terms of the members, the same thing. It's, there's a lot of cultural differences here, but I think that we're all on the same page in terms of we're here for Jesus. We're one family. Let's connect.
So for somebody who has a little difficulty engaging, like, what advice would you give to somebody who has difficulty and is awkward around, people of his own age or young adults or something like that?
I think it's really important to seek out a sanguine. Okay. Just one, not 10 of them. A person who's super outgoing, and most sanguines tend to, find a non-sanguine and an introverted person and try to make them become more extroverted. Connect with one of those people. Once you're connected to an extroverted individual, you'll get to know a lot of people. You'll go places you never thought you would go. You'll connect with people you never thought you'll connect with, because that's the thing about connection. You really only need to know one person who is super connected in the community that you're in before you realize you're in the same position, that everybody, not because you are outgoing. I don't think that an outgoing person should ever really force themselves to be extroverted. I don't think they'll ever find themselves in a place where they feel comfortable doing that. But just be yourself, be kind, show yourself friendly, and don't be afraid to try new things. But that usually means you need to find an extrovert who will take you to those new things and be a good friend to you.
Yeah, that is so true. As an introvert myself, I usually find that I have to have that extrovert friend who will invite me places, because if I'm trying to find places, I'm not finding places. I'm cuddled in my house, enjoying it. So you just started over there. How long ago was that again?
I've been here since the beginning of August.
Okay, August. So it hasn't been long, but what are your favorite moments there in this ministry over there?
My favorite moments, I think it just all goes back to, when I'm doing Bible studies and people want to know Jesus more, when they get excited about not just learning about him, but knowing him. That I love that. When we do our small groups here, or our young adult series that we're having right now, and people can just feel safe to ask me questions. I'm not much of a person that holds things back. My life story is going to be heard at some point, or at all points, because I don't usually tend to hide those things. So I love being able to share and to create spaces where people feel comfortable for that to happen, where they can ask me questions that just seem so insane to ask during divine worship, or, where older people are at, or just where the group is bigger. So I really do appreciate our small groups here. One of my highlights of my week is Connect at the Mill, which is I do a weekly meeting where I give away drinks and I sit down with students over at the coffee place across the street from the school. And I really get to interact with whoever comes, whether they need prayer or they just need some advice about life, or they want to share their dream with me about what they hope for their future. I really look forward to that, just to have the privilege to be able to be a sounding board for people. I don't think it's something to be taken lightly.
Wow. So as we also talk about mentorship here on this page, I want to ask you, do you have any tips that you that have resonated with you even today from any mentors that are dear to you? Or
I guess I'm going to just bring up Growing Young. If Growing Young Adventist, or the book Growing Young itself, has really been a catalyst to the way that I perceive ministry. I guess mostly because it was able to verbalize a lot of things that I thought I believed in the way ministry should be done. But it's all just kind of summed up in this one quote, belonging before belief. For a long time, not just Adventism, but a lot of denominations, they kind of put you through this test of, well, if you believe our fundamental beliefs, then you can become a part of the family of God through baptism. But the reality is that people become a family of God once they see Jesus in the family of God. And that only comes through a place where you feel like you belong. And that takes place through life groups and through just connectedness and friendship. So that one quote is constantly, I guess it's the mantra of my ministry, belonging before belief. If people feel they belong, if they feel this is a safe place, if they literally see Jesus through your life and through the ministries that you're doing, they're going to eventually come to a place where they're going to want to hear you out, where they're going to want to know the truth that and it's truth to them because they've seen how it's impacted your life. This is not just me saying it. This is me living it and then teaching you about it. And you see that. So, belonging before belief.
All right. So you mentioned Growing Young, and you were part of, I believe, a cohort in a few years back who went to Fuller Institute and learned and discussed and talked about it. So can you tell us a little bit about Growing Young and its plans in the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the division and what they plan going forward?
Well, I'm definitely not the planner. That's Alan Martin. That's my
Mhm.
homie.
Mm.
He's a visionary and is a big proponent of Growing Young. For those of you who don't know Growing Young, Fuller Youth Institute basically did a survey. Uh, they surveyed over 500 churches who were successfully engaging youth and young adults. And they said, what are all these churches doing in common that we can use and implement in other churches? And there were 6 core commitments that all these churches were doing, whether intentionally or non-intentionally, but it was just part of the life of their church. And it was these 6 core commitments that we were taught on integration. But essentially, Growing Young is not an event. It's not an event. It's not a one-time training. Growing Young, it's a culture shift. It's about changing perceptions, changing ideas of how church is done. Like I mentioned before, for a long time, we said, believe these fundamental beliefs, then you become a part of the body of God. But the truth is, you find belonging, and then you will want to be a part of the body of God. And I feel that is what the 6 core commitments are. They focus on leadership, key chain leadership, which focuses heavily on mentorship. It focuses on being a good neighbor, making sure that we're not just living for that we're not just maintaining the church body and the church building, but that we are literally bringing Jesus to the world and not expecting the world to come into our churches. And when they don't come, we're surprised, but that we are influencers of our communities for their betterment. And I'm not talking about like, oh, let's give away water, hoping to lure people into our church service. It's about giving people water because they're thirsty. So those are just a couple of the core commitments. But yeah, read the book. It's great.
All right. So that's a great endorsement for that book. I've read a couple of chapters on it. So if you're wanting to be a mentor and if you're in youth ministry, definitely should be reading that book, especially when you said it focuses on cultural shift, like it changing that's something I'm hearing a lot about. Young people are asking for that so that they can be heard. So any advice for anyone who wants to be a youth mentor or is hearing the call to youth ministry? Any advice for anybody like that?
I guess the biggest advice is to do some deep reflection. Why do you want to be in ministry? Why do you feel youth ministry is your calling? And I think those are really important questions to ask yourself, because sometimes people come into ministry and you'll meet them, those individuals who think it's about becoming famous, or, Adventist famous or Christian famous, or people who want to brand themselves. And don't get me wrong, I totally believe in branding for the sake of Christ, not necessarily for your own uplifting, but really question yourself. And if you ever find yourself on the road where it's really just about you and your glorification and you being known, question it, and then give your heart over to the Lord, repent of it, and then really see what it is that God wants you to do and how he wants you to do it. Because ministry in itself is not for the weak. You need thick skin in this ministry, because, if they did it to the Savior, they'll do it to you. And that was the church.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens in ministry. You have your members each, chew you up and spit you out. The community ignores you. You don't get the praise you think you deserve. No one thanks you. Ministry is a thankless endeavor, knowing that you are doing the work for the Lord and only for him. But for more practical tips, numbers are not as important as people. So if you have 2 people or 1 person who shows up, that's enough. That's enough to give your best and to do what it is that you were called to do. Patience. You need patience. Don't try to come in and make changes just because you're so gung-ho. Learn from the people. Thirdly, find the movers and shakers in any church or ministry that you work in. Connect with them. See their opinion. See how you can collaborate. And I guess that leads into the 4th one. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. We can call small groups, life groups, cell groups, but they're all the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're so bent on just reinventing wheels instead of hopping on board with other people and, uniting our resources and our manpower for this one goal of reaching the people in our community for Jesus Christ. We got to let the air out of our heads sometimes and let the gospel into our hearts a little bit more, so that way we can work together better.
Wow. All right. And those tips are coming from somebody who started being a pastor in August at this church. So that I can tell, sister.
But you got to know, a calling doesn't start when you get paid. A calling
Yes.
starts when you accept it. So although I just started my pastoral position here, I have been in ministry from the day that I accepted the call from Jesus Christ. You know, I've and just like you have been in ministry from the day you've been called and accepted that call from Christ. So we have to watch our language too, right? We have to empower people, because there are leaders now who aren't conference presidents yet. There are leaders now who are still in college, who are not taking up the GC presidency, you know, because once we accept the call, that's when we are what we are called to do.
Amen. Amen. So right there, great, wonderful tips from Pastor Guadalupe. I am so happy that I had you on. And you are a mentor, definitely. And not only to those young people over there at the where you're at, but also to myself. So thank you so much for being here at Youth Ministry and Mentorship 101. We'll continue to pray for your ministry. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. And remember, at Youth Ministry and Mentorship 101, we say that youth ministry is not a stepping stone into ministry. Youth ministry is ministry, period.